Hello, everybody. Welcome to part 3 of our Kentucky Derby preview, where we picked up or left off with War Story. Now, I was doing notes for the race, and I completely missed War Story. So I don't know anything about him except he has no chance.
Yeah, exactly. He could barely get a mile and an eighth in those races, let alone, try and get an extra furlong in this race. He has no chance
So
whatsoever. He's a complete
I'm
toss.
actually seeing this for the first time, and he flattened
You
in
never
the
want to
Illinois
see that.
Derby. Yeah, you don't want to see flattened, especially when they have to run longer in the next race.
Uh-huh. And
So
actually, if you want to move to the next horse, Mr. Z, you also see the same comment flattened. This horse has really just been completely lackluster in his workouts coming into this race.
now, when this horse wins the Derby, then we'll all look at this blinkers off and go, oh. But
That's not going to do
that's
anything.
not going to do anything.
No.
Mr. Z.
Also owned by
He,
the Zayats, along with El Kabir and the next horse we're going to look at, American Pharaoh.
yeah. So,
But why is he in this race?
well, he's in the race because they took a shot at the Arkansas Derby specifically to put him in the race, and that's why. This horse lost 11 in a row. This horse broke his maiden first out, and then lost 11.
And he hasn't won since.
And has lost 11 straight. Okay. So,
I mean, he put it in the Los Alamitos Futurity. He actually ran really, really well against Dortmund and Firing Line, two key contenders in this race. The problem is those two have improved leaps and bounds since then, and Mr. Z hasn't improved at all. He stayed the same.
right. And he lost by 8.5 lengths.
Right, but that's because American Pharaoh was scintillating in that. We'll
No,
talk about that in a second.
I mean the Dortmund in that race.
What? He only lost by a head.
No. Come on. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
That's right.
they were. That was the three noses across
That's
the wire.
right.
One of
That's
the
right.
best
I
races
forgot.
that I've seen the last year.
I forgot.
It's okay.
My fault. Right.
Sorry, I'm the expert here, right?
Right. You are the expert. So Mr. Z comes out in the Louisiana Derby, loses by 21 lengths. He should.
I actually forgot about that.
He should, for all intents and purposes, be off the Derby trail at this point.
Yeah.
But Zayat Staples
He picked up some garbage points in the Arkansas Derby against a very weak field outside of American Pharaoh.
They've got money to burn, and they just threw him out there, and he picked up enough points.
Yeah. Well, let's just move on because he doesn't have a chance. And
so about Mr. Zayat, right? How's his spelling?
Zayat?
Yeah.
What do you mean? How's his spelling?
How can he? Because this is American Pharaoh.
Oh yeah, he kind of messed that up when he sent it into the Jockey Club, and he actually thought the Jockey Club screwed that up, and then he realized no, it was actually me.
Right.
Good job, Zayat.
I love that story. It's like, no, I didn't do it, and then they pulled out the form.
It's like, what do we got here? Oh yeah, I guess I did. Anyway, let's go on to talk about American Pharaoh.
We were talking about
American Pharaoh. That's right, we were. We're going to say why he is such an excellent racehorse.
I would just say what you're going to say, but I would say it in a less articulate fashion. So
go ahead. No, I'll let you try it. Shall I?
He is the deserving favorite of the race. He's 5-2. So this horse lost his first time out. Right? Mm-hmm. So his first maiden race, he lost by 9.5 furlongs. After a losing performance, he jumped right into a grade 1 and won the race. Mm-hmm. And not only won the race, he won it like extremely impressive.
Yes.
Right? Then he hops in the next race and wins it extremely impressively. Now, during those two races, he was a 2-year-old. Mm-hmm. And I just want to point out the horse that he beat, Texas Red. And here in the front runner stakes, right? Mm-hmm. Then, unfortunately, he got hurt.
Just a couple of days before he was going to run the Breeders' Cup Juvenile, which I thought he was a lock to win.
And be the favorite. Right. And so Texas Red goes out, crushes in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile, and American Pharaoh crushed him. And then Texas Red got hurt. That's why he's not in the Derby. So he takes some time off. He heals up. He comes back and crushes. Like
off of that long of a layoff, and he only has 2 races before the Derby, when some of these other horses have probably run 4 or 5 times since its race. But the way he's handled it
They
is
haven't
phenomenal.
run 4 and 5 times since what, September?
Well, I'm saying this year, like even going back to January and December.
Well, I mean, the third start off a layoff that's still a key thing that you need to look at.
Right.
But
if you're leading up to the Derby, you probably want 3 or 4.
No, he started off a layoff, and there's other horses that start off a layoff, like Upstart's fourth off a layoff, but
not off a layoff between September and March. That's a significant amount of time to be out, but it hasn't affected him at all.
No, and so on the 26th of April, the horse ran a bullet, 5 furlongs and 58 and 4.
And might I add, I've been watching horse racing for most of my life. Visually watching that workout, that was the best workout I have ever seen any horse do ever.
Yeah,
that was so unbelievably impressive. It honestly took my breath away just watching it.
Yeah,
the way he moves, he has such an easy, fluid stride. And it may have looked like he was only running 102. He ran 58 and 4. The rider never asked him. Galloped out 6 furlongs at 111. Just horses don't regularly do that. Honestly, I think he's a freak of nature.
Right. And I just want to direct you back to part 1. We were talking about the bullet work that the 3 horse ran. His name escapes me right now. And he ran 5 furlongs in
Materiality.
No.
That was the 3 horse, but anyway, forget about it.
Okay. He ran 5 furlongs in a minute. I went too far.
Way too far.
He ran 5 furlongs in a minute and ran a bullet. So he was the top horse. Okay, 10. I was talking about 10 Sender.
Right.
10 Sender ran 5 furlongs in a minute.
Mm-hmm.
American Pharaoh ran 5 furlongs in 58.
Without ever being asked.
Right.
and looking like he was going much, much easier than 10 Sender was.
Right. And I'm not a visual handicapper because they look like a horse to me. Right? I can't even tell when a horse is on the wrong lead. People always talk about, I can't tell. Right? But I saw the American Pharaoh workout, and I saw his little legs churning, and I said, wow, that looks cool.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So I don't know anything about horse racing from a horse perspective. And so then, like I said, well, without even knowing the time, so I said, wow, that looks cool.
And there's also somebody in the industry who's been clocking workouts for 35 years, and he said that American Pharaoh is probably the best horse he has ever seen, certainly the best one he has ever clocked. Now, whether that actually adds to hype is one thing, but this gentleman has been around for 35 years, and I'm not trying to hype up this horse because there's a couple of things in this race that can go against him. He's obviously the horse to beat. Some people think that Dortmund is the better horse. That's up for debate. I think he is the better horse talent-wise. But there's one problem, and that's significant. Not only does he like to be up near the pace, although I think he's actually good enough to be able to overcome any pace pressure, but he drew the 18 hole, which means he is going to have to be sent hard to be on the lead, which you'd rather be rating a horse like this off of a horse, say, like Stanford or Ocho Ocho Ocho. But the rider, Victor Espinoza, who won this race last year with California Chrome, has no choice but to send him up toward the front to get ahead of the rest of the pack to his inside. Or, if he takes him back, all those horses are going to try and fan him as wide into the first turn as he can go, and that could cause significant ground loss for him and really, he is at a complete tactical disadvantage from this post, whereas Dortmund has the best tactical advantage of any horse in the race. So this horse may just be that freakish to be able to overcome all of this, and I'll be using him, but it's going to be a tall task, and if he is able to win this race, he is a serious racehorse.
And a serious Triple Crown contender. Assuming he wins.
Assuming he wins, because most likely he wins the Preakness next week. I'll go jump out and say that. Whether he can get the distance of the Belmont is a different story, but he is a serious talent, and at this point...
Has the horse even been whipped since his maiden race? I don't know.
No, because that Arkansas Derby, he just drew off at will.
Right.
Was never even asked, and he ran 148 and 5, which is only a second off of the track record at most racetracks across the country, and he was never asked. What will this horse be able to do if he's actually asked to run during a race?
Run.
I guess we'll see.
Run is the answer.
And run like hell. But We'll see what happens. At 5-2, he offers no value, but he may just be that good. We'll see.
He did kind of rate the Arkansas Derby, so he can rate here.
He can.
And I think they're.
But he may not have a choice.
I think they're smart. It's Baffert. Baffert already has the front runner there in Dortmund, kind of the.
Yes.
So, I think they're smart enough to kind of rate, and
right, but the problem is the post. If he drew inside a few more, that'd be fine. But at that post, it's not in his control. It's not at Baffert's control. It has everything to do with all the horses to his inside and what they're going to try and do and take him out of the race.
It's not like he's right next to some of the top horses that he's not going to be able to outbreak. I mean,
right.
But you have to go all the way to the 8th post for Dortmund. So. I mean, which of these horses here are going to outbreak him? I mean,
none of them are.
Well, we talked about Stanford going to the front. That's it.
But the thing is, those other speed horses who is inside could still try and fan him out.
Right.
He's
also the target because he's the favorite.
Exactly.
People are going to take shots at him,
and he's the best horse in the race.
Right. But the last 2 years, the favorite, the best horse in the race, has won the Kentucky Derby. So
against much lesser fields than this one.
Well, I know, but but he is a much classier horse.
He is much better than California Chrome was at this time.
We're talking about one of the best fields that I can remember.
The best one I've ever seen. Coming into this race.
Yeah,
time will tell.
Well, that says a lot considering you, because you know more of the history than I do, right? And he's miles and away the best horse. I mean,
I wouldn't say miles away because Dortmund is very close right behind him. Those two are certainly way better.
I would like to see them on an even, maybe a 6-horse field. Just
that would be fun. It's never going to happen.
It's never going to happen.
Bob
It's the same trainer, right?
But
anyway, so the only excuse that we're making for this guy is the post,
And that's a big factor considering his running style.
Well, I mean,
and he's the target. We're repeating ourselves.
Big Brown from the 20-hole one.
Against probably the weakest field I can ever remember. Night and day. Yeah. Okay, anyway, let's move on to Upstart.
So Upstart's the horse that got disqualified in kind of the BS fashion that we talked about earlier. Then ran a pretty tough for him race last time out in the Florida Derby.
Right.
Very grueling race where he lost to Materiality as the favorite.
And both those racetracks in his last 2 races were very tiring.
Right. So what kind of...
How's he come out of that?
Right, that's what I'm trying to say. Well, he had a fever.
Right.
So he missed
he missed the workout,
time, right?
Yes.
Because he had a fever. So even though they say he looks fine now, you want a horse that's fit. You don't want to if you're plunking your money down on a horse, you don't really want to say, he was really tired and then he got a fever.
Right.
It's not exactly what you're going for.
However, in Upstart's case, he's bounced back from that like it didn't even happen. And especially that's evidenced by that April 17th workout at Palm Meadows where he ran 47-4 Breeze. And that was a very, very good workout. And, this 60 in Breeze that you see next on April 25th, I wouldn't even worry about the time in that because that was probably just a maintenance move like a fast jog that was fast enough to record a time. So I wouldn't even worry about that time. But
that's the same 5 furlongs in a minute we were talking about.
Yes.
Before.
Right.
And you're saying that it's just the light jog.
but wait a minute. It's 60 in Breeze. I'm sorry. Normally I just messed up because normally you would never see 60. It would say 1 minute.
Right.
Why in the world it says 60? That just threw me off. I've actually never seen that before. I was seen that.
I was just thinking that, and I was thinking it's probably like 59 and 9. And they just round it
right. up to 60. I've never seen that. But
I've never seen 60.
Forget about what I just said about a maintenance move. That's for a different topic.
Maybe it was 60 minutes.
Yeah, wouldn't that be awesome? Yeah.
He just took a light jog then with 8 other horses that were just super slow.
But bottom line, this horse has really bounced out of that tiring Florida Derby. He's had 5 weeks to recover. Much like International Star, who was also very hard used in his race and looked like he was tired. both of them have come back great because they've had 5 weeks of rest, plenty of time to get back into it. Even though Upstart had that fever and missed the work, he's still fine, and actually, I think he has a legitimate shot to hit the board in this race,
Well,
based on how he's training.
He's never not hit the board.
True.
So yeah, of course you got to consider him too.
I think he'll sit a nice trip mid-pack, also from that post, and he offers a lot of value at 15-1. And I actually never liked this horse all along on the Derby Trail, but something tells me, I have to use him based on the way he's training coming into this race.
All right, let's go to
I don't think he can win.
Let's go to Far Right. So Far Right, you are going to hear on NBC because I love his underdog story.
Mm-hmm.
So this is the January Keeneland sale. Okay, so can you explain what the January Keeneland sale is? I can't.
I actually don't know all that much about sales, but I do know that if you're buying a horse for $2,500 at Keeneland, that is not much at all.
Right, and this horse was a yearling. So he's a little baby. He's a little baby horse. But there's a lot of little baby horses that get sold at that sale, right?
Right.
And
sometimes for $1 million, $2 million.
Right. And he's basically the runt of the litter. $2,500, right? So you'll hear a whole bunch of the California Chrome comparisons on NBC. I guarantee it, right?
Mm-hmm.
But what they may not say is that this horse was then sold for a undisclosed amount to an investment banker after that.
Sheila Penta, yeah.
So six figures at least, mid six figures.
All these horses are rich beyond.
Right. So it's not exactly the Chrome, the Chrome comparison doesn't hold up.
No, because that was like a 1 in a million shot with what happened with Chrome.
So don't get fooled by the NBC underdog story, okay? Now let's talk about the actual horse.
No chance.
Well, he lost by 8 to American Pharaoh, and now he has to beat American Pharaoh.
Right.
So,
and it was all. Mike Smith also said that he was trying to. All they wanted to do was get second, just to be able to get the points to run the Derby. So he says that he saved enough to be able to run the Derby. He also is a deep closer. I think just about as deep as Keen Ice, who we mentioned before.
Right. So that's what I was marking here. So he's a determined closer, and that comes out of the clouds. So determined closer, Kentucky Derby, fast pace, exacta.
I just don't think he's fast enough to be able to. I mean, obviously he could. You never know. It's horse racing, but I just don't think that he's going to be fast enough to be able to get up for a spot in the superfecta.
Not even the superfecta?
I mean, at some point, when you have other horses like International Star and Dancing Moon that I think are much more likely to be able to do that, there's certain horses like Tensendor, Keen Ice, and Far Right that, you just can't afford to put on your tickets, So there's a lot of other better horses in the race than Far Right. Even if Mike Smith is on him and the 20 post isn't going to hurt him at all because the horse basically has to break last, and still have a shot to do because that's his running style. But also his workouts, he just didn't seem to have a lot of energy at all in his workouts at Churchill Downs leading up to this race, and he doesn't show anywhere near the energy that a horse like American Pharaoh would show, or even International Star and Dancing Moon.
Well, if there's going to be a pace collapse, somebody has to close.
And I think it's going to be somebody like Dancing Moon who is showing that he is fit enough coming into this race, and not somebody like Far Right who is not showing that.
Okay.
Leading up to it.
Okay. There are two also entered. That means if somebody else scratches, and they have to do it by Friday, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So then they will be able to enter. I'm not even going to talk about them. And if they win the Derby.
Well, they're not going to win the Derby, but I think it's worth talking about Fermento. The horse that is outside Tilleverve is no shot whatsoever. But if Fermento gets in the Derby, he's one that, especially 51, I would seriously consider putting at the bottom of my superfecta. He was closing like a rocket in that race at Gulfstream.
I don't know why you're putting closers on the bottom of the superfecta. You should the closers are not the ones that finish in fourth. That's the guys who are fading finishing fourth.
Not necessarily, because I think this race is going to be a different dynamic, and we'll talk about that in a second. How I think the race will set up in terms of running styles of horses. I think that the closers are going to be third and fourth. We'll talk about that shortly, but I think Fermento has a legitimate shot if he draws in and if one of the horses gets injured, which they have to be by Friday morning at 9 o'clock, otherwise he's out. But if he gets in, I would use him in the bottom of the Super.
Okay, we will take a break and we will come back with our picks.
Okay.